Todos y a todas. Me llamo Rosabel Rochvila, soy la directora de la Cátedra UNESCO de Educación, Investigación e Inclusión Digital de la Universidad de Alicante. Soy profesora en esta universidad y para mí hoy es un placer, un honor dar la bienvenida a una nueva mesa redonda en torno al conocimiento, en torno a la tecnología y especialmente dar la bienvenida a la profesora Nenna Ibesim. Ella ha sido profesora visitante en nuestra universidad, en la Universidad de Alicante, gracias a un programa del Vicerrectorado de Relaciones Internacionales para mujeres investigadoras del ámbito de África, del ámbito subsahariano. Ha sido un placer que nos visitara y ella hoy va a coordinar esta nueva mesa redonda. Por mi parte, no tengo nada más que añadir respecto a lo que es el contenido, porque ella os lo comentará. Sí que indicar respecto a la organización que para aquellas personas que quieran recibir certificado de esta mesa redonda, en el chat del canal de YouTube, donde estoy segura que muchos habéis ya indicado y habéis dado habéis saludado en este inicio, ahí digo, indicaremos el enlace al formulario para que podáis registraros y con ello poder nosotros certificar la actividad. Así que cuando veáis ese formulario, por favor, lo cumplimentáis únicamente una vez, con una vez es suficiente y ahora lo indicaremos también para aquellas personas de habla parlante inglesa y con ello empezaremos.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Rosabel.
So,
Sí.
hello everyone, just to say one thing about the organization, and it's the thing that Rosabel is just telling, that we will share a form to all the attendees to complete by the chat of YouTube. So you can continue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Nena, when you want, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. And I welcome everyone, especially the Professor Rosabel, the UNESCO chair at the University of Alicante, Spain. I also welcome all the speakers that are already here. I welcome Dr. Abo from Germany, Professor Ogo from the USA. I also welcome Professor Udano and from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and also other speakers that will join later. Because of the time constraint, we will go straight to receiving the presentation. I also welcome all our participants that have joined. We look forward to a very engaging time. So we will go straight to the presentations, and we will start with the presentation of Dr. Solomon Abu. Just a brief intro. Dr. Solomon Nwabweze Abu has a PhD in materials, physics, and sustainable energy. He is a senior scientist and project manager at the Research Center, Jülich, Germany. He is an Alexander von Humboldt Foundation postdoctoral fellow. Dr. Abu has initiated several multi-million euro research projects. He is the coordinator of the German government-funded H2 Atlas Africa project, involving his research center in Germany and 35 African countries, including Nigeria. Dr. Abu has published widely in reputable journals in the fields of solar energy system analysis, as well as policy frameworks for green hydrogen-enabled energy transition. He's a member of many international organizations. I welcome Dr. Abu to make his presentation. Dr. Bu, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Professor Bezim, for the introduction. So I would go straight to the presentation, and I will share my screen.
Okay, before you go on, let me tell the participants that you are free to ask your questions using the chat platform. Ask your questions, drop your questions in the chat platform. We will attend to them. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you again for the invitation. I really was very excited when Professor Ibezim reached out to me to be part of this meeting. Looking at the topic, initially I felt like, okay, this is not within the energy space, but then everything that we are doing has to do with information. So I really find it quite interesting, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. Okay, just a few slides about our research center. So I work for the federal government, German federal government institution. So it's called Forschungszentrum Jülich in German, and that means Research Center Jülich. So it's one of the leading German research center, founded in 1956, and so we are funded or mainly supported from the federal government. So 90% of our base funding comes from the federal government, and then 10% from the regional government where we are. So we have 15 institutes within the research center, and then we have two, big project management agencies that are also autonomous but still part of the research center. So we have an annual budget of nearly 1 billion euros, and 40% of this we acquire from third-party funded projects like the Horizon Europe project, or funding from some other German ministries. So we have over 7,600 employees from various parts of the world, so mainly scientists and postdocs, PhD students. And then we also have guest scientists who visit from time to time from around the world. Okay, so we are located in West Germany, very close to the border with the Netherlands, and we have outposts. So Jülich is our main base, so where we have the main campus of the research center, but then we have some other outposts within Germany, but also even outside Germany, where we connect with several other institutions we work together with. So what do we do? Three broad areas of our research focus. So one is in information, and which is relevant for the topic we are handling today. Then the other broad area is the field of energy. So, and then we have bioeconomy. So information is quite broad. So also the field of energy and bioeconomy. But what we try to do is to do a big scan that's used for energy. For example, we start from very basic material synthesis, building up to devices, but also looking at systems, integrated systems. Okay, in the center of everything that we do, and that's how also this connects to the discussion today, is the issue of data. So in the energy space, for example, we're looking at renewable energy, climate and health, energy systems of the future. But then at the center of all of that, so whether you're modeling energy systems, you are using data. The same in the field of information, where we do high performance computing, so using our supercomputers, or we do brain research, or we do look at weather forecasting, or even in the field of bioeconomy also, where we do all kinds of bioactivities, plant sciences, soil sciences, but also a little bit above the earth, so a little bit in the upper layers of the atmosphere. So all of these at the center, you would have data sciences, lots of simulations, models. Okay, so that's just a few information about our research center, but then I'll just come to the topic that I would have to handle within the time that has been allocated to me. So what are deepfakes? So we are in the era of AI, and so AI generates quite a lot of what is called synthetic media or synthetic materials. And these are artificially generated material, AI generated materials that are almost like the real, almost like the reality. So they very strongly, very convincingly mimic reality, that it's sometimes very difficult just casually to make a difference between what is real and what is synthetic. And you find them in various forms. They could be audio, they could be video, they could be texts, and then also in several forms. So these are all, this can be all synthetic materials, AI generated. And they are mainly, so you have them mainly, generated from deep neural networks, where you do lots of synthesis of data, and then from this huge data, generate these synthetic media that replicates the the real thing that is the target. Okay, let me start by, so I did this while I was preparing for this presentation. Maybe I'm sure that the audience, you're looking at this. So the first question I would ask is, so if you look at these images, can you spot which of these is a deep fake? So which of these images would you think is a deep fake? So looking at it visually, I don't know what you would think, but I would help you with the answer. Yes. So I have indicated. So the first one is the original image. So this is a photograph of me taken at the research center. But then I just put this and I asked AI to generate for me. Just generate this picture. So the last two you see are generated from AI. And one thing that marveled me, and that's why this discussion we're having is very important. The actual figure, the actual image does not show my shoulder. But I put this in and I asked AI to replicate this. It gave me a shoulder that looks very perfect. And that's the dangerous thing here. You look at this, you would be like, but I did not give the system a shoulder. I just gave this picture on the extreme left, and then it gave me two good pictures. That is almost very difficult to distinguish that this is AI generated. Okay, and so I say here, so deepfakes are two-edged swords. You can look at them as two-edged swords. So they are two-edged swords because there are several good things that has to do with deepfakes. There are so many positive aspects of the fact that you are able to replicate something as close to the real as possible. And then on the other side, there are also pitfalls. There are also disadvantages to all of this. And you find this play out in different fields. So in education, for example, so where we are focusing our discussion, there are so many tools that are available now that really have enhanced the whole process of teaching and learning, both for the teacher and also the students. Whether it's interactive visual instructors or doing simulations or language learning or even access to data. This is a huge value that we can get from all of the things that are possible with AI and deepfakes. Now, in medical care, there are also lots of innovations that leverage the ability to recreate images, recreate sounds, recreate speeches to advance medical care. So you'd have speech reconstruction, for example, for people who, because of ill health or condition, lose that. Then we have medical training to do all kinds of simulations or therapeutic simulations. So there are lots of advantages in the same. Also in the entertainment industry, there are visual effects that you can only do now because of these advancements. Then there is this issue of de-aging. So somebody is 50, but then you can create an effect to make the person 20 years older. or even 20 years younger. So these are all possibilities that are, available now for the industry. In research, you also find, in a very, in a very great measure, several enabling tools that we can use today to do a lot of things. Top of them would be the increased access to information that we all enjoy in the field of research. So there are quite a lot on the positive side that you can see with regards to deepfakes. But like I put here on the screen, so this is like a two-edged sword. There is also the other side, that is the downside. So we have the fact that because of deep fakes, there are cases of impersonation, falsification, assessment, fraud. That's at the end put together will lead to a devalued outcome. So sometimes people are not able to do so much on their own now because they are basically able to have that done or even impersonated. So you have some form of devaluation. And then we also have this very big risk of manipulation or wrong dialysis also in the medical care. So you have possibility these days that diagnosis can be altered, lab results can be altered, tests. So and all of this has attendant risk to life and fraud and all of that. So there is the misuse and misrepresentation. So whether it's in the entertainment industry, there are lots of cases also where people have been misrepresented. People have been accredited to certain speeches which they did not make, all because this is possible with deepfakes. And of course, the issue of data manipulation. So false data that people use in research, altered data, altered figures, filled in lots of things these days that people do. As because it's possible, there are tools to make that happen. So why should we be concerned? So like I said, so it's two-edged sword. So there is a value, but then there is also the threat. So but why should we be concerned? We should be concerned because there is the risk of misinformation. There is the risk of fraud, identity theft, victimization. So you don't like someone, people just go and create things that are not real. And then before you know it, it takes 1 year before you are able to explain that you didn't say this or you didn't do this. There are also ethical issues. Then there is the implication for jobs. This is a very big discussion globally that there are fields that are already very strongly challenged because a lot of things are possible with AI these days, and so we have that threat. Then academic integrity. So this is a very big challenge. Academic integrity. People tend to rely a lot more now on AI and do a lot of generation and think less, and sometimes don't even give the right acknowledgement. So that's a big question, and really at the center of many of the things. And then the last thing I have here is detection challenges. So it's not very easy to detect, like my photo that I showed. It's not easy to detect what's the real photo from the ones generated from AI. I mean, I didn't give AI my shoulder, but he gave me one. So you can't have this kind of misrepresentation, which could be a problem for anybody. Okay, so when you zero into education, whether it's in form of research or just training, you find that, like I said, at the center of the issue is at the center is the issue of academic integrity. So you have on one hand that we have improved access or improved ease of learning. We have access to data. We have access to information. You can simulate whatever you want to simulate. You can create so many things there. I mean, huge possibilities. But then on the other hand, you have the challenge of misuse, of abuse, of misrepresentation of facts, but also the other things that are ethical things that are related to that. But then the struggle is, how do we balance this to keep academic integrity? So how do you make sure that we we don't lose out? We keep our system, we keep integrity that our system should have, both for the students and for the teachers, but also for the system as a whole. Okay, so I propose some frameworks that could help to manage deepfakes. There is no, I mean, we should not be thinking about that possibility that this goes away in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So it has come to stay. So it's good that we really talk about managing it. One is technology. So we have to look at technologies to detect. We have to think about forensic analysis, content authentication systems, even biological clues. So sometimes a possibility to check by looking at some biological clues. So huge effort technology wise would be required. And then the second thing I put here, it's on the policy framework. So governments, institutions, it's very important to somehow have a framework, guided by policy that enables or regulates or somehow provides a tool, a reference that people can look at to, to be guided what is allowed and what is not allowed. And in the field of education, as a next step, we have to, it's important to do lots and lots of education. So digital literacy, public awareness and training. And then I have here regular updates in curriculum and assessment approach. So this is very, very important. There are so many, you ask a student now to write an essay on, I don't know what it is. I have a friend, a PhD student actually, that works with me here at the research center. So while he was doing his PhD, he was doing he was doing a tool to do a surface model. So he do a land surface model over the whole of Africa. And that takes him it takes him like 3 months to write a code, just to write a code that will do that on Python, that will do that analysis. Now he has master students. He tells them this evening to generate a code, and this night they will send him a code to write whatever script, because they just go to the internet and then that code is written. So there is a threat to the fact that you know the proper assessment, how to assess that the student has learned or that education is taking place, becomes more and more challenging. So there has to be a way to, yes, either do a regular update on curriculum, but also reassess the way we assess students. Then the final thing, of course, is the legal framework. It's important that people realize there could be consequences if you have to use AI to generate images that do not have authorization or misrepresent information or data, or then it should be clear that there are consequences. And I think this should also be part of um, the literacy or digital literacy public awareness campaign to address the dangers of deepfake. Okay, so to conclude, I say that deepfakes will only increase as AI and machine learning gets more sophisticated. So, like I said, this would continue to be the case, and it's important that we invest more in detection technologies and innovation. So that's the only way to just to keep up with the development also in AI. That is that we also find a way to detect deepfakes. So I said here, all hands must be on deck. So not only technology, not only education and training, policy, regulatory, legal framework. So all of these things would have to work together to ensure that all the grounds that need to be covered to manage deepfakes are covered. And then the last thing I wrote here, particularly with reference to education, so we need to somehow rethink how we assess students. So students' abilities, students' performance would need to be constantly updated, because, like I said, giving students some things to do now, you can almost be certain that so many would just get what they want without having to really to do so much. And that way you cannot tell what if a student really has learned or not. So this is very important for education. Thank you so much, and that would be it from my side. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bo. Thank you for that presentation on deepfakes. Deepfakes are two-edged swords, so we should be concerned, and we should also enable the positive edges, and especially in education, as regards assessment of students. Thank you for that presentation. Okay, we will now go ahead to take the second presentation, which will be taken by Professor Benjamin Ogwo. Professor Benjamin Ogwo is a professor and the chair of the Department of Career and Technical Educator Preparation at State University of New York, SUNY Oswego, and serves as a principal evaluator for UNICEF's work on acquisition of transferable skills among adolescents and young people. Professor Ogwo has extensive experience with major international organizations, including International Labour Organization, UNDP, UNESCO, UNICEF, the World Bank, and the African Development Bank. He has published extensively on TVET, work development and skills training, and has also developed workforce training programs ranging from defense and aerospace manufacturing to employability skills development across diverse contexts. I welcome Professor Ogwo to make his presentation. Prof.
Thank you, Professor Nenai. Thank you, members of the panel, and thank you, all the participants attending this conference. I am very pleased to share my ideas about promoting inclusivity in digitalization and AI integration in higher education. My focus is on bridging the divide for a more equitable future. So I just have 20 minutes to do this. I hope I'll be able to do justice because this is considerably a large scope to cover. Now I'll be looking at the context, the conceptual overview, the scope, the barriers, the strategies, the execution, and evidence. And I will conclude with an institutional action plan for inclusivity and also some recommendation. Just for transparency, I couldn't be talking about AI integration without using one. I used a couple of them, Cloud, Gemini, Copilot. Just like the last presenter, Dr. Abu said, I went to AI and told AI, Nano Banana precisely, to give me some pictures that I will use for this presentation. And it did. I will share with you subsequently. Now, you will see that on the first slide, for a disclaimer, I am not a robot. I am human. We've all had this experience where we have to really vouch to the computer that we're human. When you are faced with two-step or three-step authentication, you have to really convince the computer to allow you that you are human, otherwise you are a robot. So that's what our society has actually turned out to be. We're now in an era, a new era, where we have to validate our humanness. There's automation all over the place, both in the workforce and in being active citizen. You have to, in especially the developed part of the world, where you have to vote using the internet, where you have to fill some forms, pay your taxes, do some shopping. For you really to engage in active citizenship, you really have to have some measure of digital literacy and competency. Yes, even in society, employment, civil society, everything is digitalized now. That's where we are. The higher education sphere is not spared. The higher education has come up with a lot of digitalization, and the AI has come up as the latest inclusion. I've been teaching in the US within the last 20 years, graduating students online. If I graduate 100 of them, I wouldn't have met any one of them. Or at least, maybe during the commencement, I'll meet one or two of them, say, okay, you are this. that's possible now. We've been doing it for a couple of years. So it's not new. That's where we are. Now, but AI has come up, and we also now need to make some definitions for the purposes of, including those who are not actually in the technology spheres. Digitalization is not just about leveraging on digital technology. It goes beyond that. Like I just told you, beyond the LMS, learning management system, where you now teach all your classes. There are newer micro credentials where people will now have to acquire some micro credentials as part of their curriculum. So instead of taking a whole program, you just take some subunits of it in chips. That's what this generation in higher education is going up to. Then colleges and institutions are trying to revise, and training institutes are revising that. You may not need a whole degree program. You just need some micro credentials, to be able to get a job. And in the technology spheres, you have a lot of certifications going on. Now, here comes AI, machine learning, and the algorithms that come with it. It holds a lot of prospects. In higher education, administrative tasks can easily be done, using those AI. As a chair of a department, you send me an email, I'll go through it, I say, okay, AI, just give me a response. Within some few minutes, it's able to articulate. When you remove some personal identification information from it, it just gives you an idea how you can do that. That's at the point of administration. In terms of research, a whole lot. You can do a lot. Initially, when AI is commenced, there was this hallucination. AI will simply make up some references. And if you are not careful, you will be caught, citing sources that never existed. But between then and now, there have been a lot of improvement. There are certain AI platforms devoted to literatures, depending on your field. So here we are. In terms of instruction, there are tutors, chatbots that could give you 24/7 kind of instruction. Then there are digital analytics that can predict students who are at risk. So somehow we are getting there to the point where AI is here to stay. Just like Dr. Abo said, we can't wish it away. Mm-hmm. If you are thinking that, just give it 5 or 10 years, it will go away. No, this has come to stay. And what does that really mean? It now means that we have to integrate it into higher education. First, by providing access, then usability and representation. In terms of access, we're looking at providing the tools and reliable internet connection, for students to access those materials. In terms of usability, we're now looking at being able to produce materials that comply with universal design principles. I could say some little more in the course of the presentation on these details. Then representation, mitigation of biases in trained data sets. Yes, I'm glad that this particular discussion and conference is bringing people both from Sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, and America. We just have to work hard wherever we are, wherever we're located, to represent ourselves. These data sets are biased by their make, not intentionally, but by the nature of who produced them, the training, the AI training platforms. So it is a challenge for scholars, even in Sub-Saharan Africa, to feel represented, to work hard, to generate, those data sets that will include everybody. Now, let's look at the dimensions of inclusivity. First, digital inclusivity, basic access, high internet speed, then software availability for those who will want to use them. Then social and cultural aspect of inclusivity. Now, what this means, there are still some students you will meet, they say they don't want to use AI. You can respect that. Not because they don't know how to, but they don't want to share their glory with the machine. So people socially and culturally are still insisting on using, their raw brain to do whatever they want to do. Then the other dimension is cognitive and physical. Well, from literature and from evidence, you see there are, substantial evidence to show neurodiversity. People think and act differently. So inclusivity will mean providing screen readers, captioning alternate platforms. For those who can't see, then it means they will need some help. For those who can't hear, providing captioning will be a very good idea. So that is what we have to look at. What is the potential? Let's face it, there's a lot of potential. If you've been using AI lately, you will see that there is nothing like it in the recent past that could improve on productivity. It could help you access a lot of resources. It could improve your efficiency. Then, in terms of individual needs, it could be adaptable to individual needs, as we could find out when we go to the subsequent slides. There's a risk, just like the last presenter, the deepfake thing, a lot of impersonation, a lot of unethical issues. These are inherent risks. But what humanity has come to know is that with such a quantum leap in our civilization, it will come with challenges. Somehow, the technology, its applications are moving much faster than the policymakers are moving. So evidently, there will be some catching up to do. So what are the core barriers? First and foremost is cost. A lot of us may not be able to afford. It seems like is what we have. Then in terms of geography, whether it's in developed countries or in developing countries, there is challenges with rural connectivity. So it's some barriers, some institutions located in remote areas will have to do something to improve their connectivity. Then infrastructure limitations, then regional and global disparities do exist. So the next is digital literacy. We all just have to improve our games. Inherently, for there is that demographic of age-related barriers. Those who were born not maybe in the last 10, 15, 20 years, you can consider them as digital natives. They've always been using technology, digital technology, so much of what AI is going to bring will not surprise them. But for some of us that are old school, you have to really work very hard to, be compliant. Then the disability access needs is also some challenge. Then in terms of, agromatic bias, whoever pays the piper dictates the tune. If the African scholars are not, waking up to that challenge of, producing algorithms that will address these biases, then you don't expect anybody to. Then these barriers are seen in literature sources. They are seen in admissions. They are seen in, when you are supervising exam via the internet and you require some facial recognition. Some of those platforms will not be able to recognize maybe somebody with a dark skin, depending on how he's trained. So then in terms of grading, if you're using AI to grade, there's also that challenge if you are not a native speaker of that language. So it has some issues. Then what do we do, for equitable access? Logic, improve some investment in infrastructure. Then open educational resources. For some years now, I don't encourage my students to buy books because there are free books out there that people find time to write these books, update these books, and allow you to, download them and use them free of charge. Then the other thing that will really be of real focus is the universal design for learning. Before now, accommodation and modifications of higher education materials were based on those with disability. Now, but the universal design for learning is saying no, just have a universal design that anybody can use. Because if you are saying, I'm producing these materials for those who are disabled, you're already stereotyping and you are putting some people at a disadvantage. Make it accessible so that everybody can use it. And in terms of funding, you can subsidize licenses. For example, in the higher education sphere, my school license for 2 AI platforms, Gemini and Copilot. So students, faculty, everybody is free to use it. But beyond those, you can still have some subsidies for other platforms that might have some specific discipline use. What do we do, to get through these barriers? First, faculty and staff empowerment. AI literacy training should be for everybody. How do you recognize, just like the last presenter, Dr. Bo said, AI do hallucinate or produce fake materials. How do you identify them? Somehow, when people copy and paste, you run the risk of pasting what it doesn't really exist. Then technical support should be provided for especially non-technical academic departments to be able to use AI, because for one, it enhances productivity and it's of benefit for everybody. Then funding, it's another area where scholars will have to, sit down, write up some grants. There are a lot of agencies, especially these AI companies, that are willing to fund this thing to the extent that you help them train, their machines. So they will be glad, to fund you when you're doing any of these experiments or exercises for them. Now, this is the picture. I was just trying to ask, I tried to ask Nano Banana, give me a picture for my slide. Integrating AI in higher education. This is what he produced. He produced humans in a class, he produced instructors, and he's telling me that AI could be used for personalized learning. It could have some ethical consideration issue, and it could have some administrative efficiency. I didn't tell AI any of this. I just, sent in the topic and told the AI, my audience, that I'm going to speak to in a round conference, and AI came up with this. Somehow, this is the future that we're living in the present. So what do? Integrate, make it a student center. Now, for REACT to be inclusivity, you have to be there on the table when these things are planned. So that empowerment of students is not just about, having them to adapt to the use of AI. It means having them to learn how to be involved in developing the algorithms, in training the machines, and in coming up with ethical questions and ethical governance, participation, and using their feedback to inform policy. So empowerment will just go beyond, okay, this is the policy, students should do this. They should be there when these policies are made. So what would the other stakeholders do? For faculty, if you use AI to do your job, you will see that life is good. It helps you, starting from your syllabus, your content, just name it. If you can think it, AI can do it. But it's still for you, there's a challenge, the risk of over-reliance on AI. It's a disease too. So you have to be sure that you go through whatever AI gives you as output, and make sure you consistently keep upskilling yourself as a user, as a faculty member. And the more you get to use it, the more you get to learn and use it more ethically anyway. Now, for students, there's really no end. Personalized instruction. You can tell AI, give me this assignment for this particular student. You dictate the characteristics. It will just give you that. And when you are using dynamic profiling, it could anticipate the challenges a particular student is going through an assessment and come up with something that the student will, learn much faster. So, but still, there is that inclusivity challenge, privacy issues, tracking data, because setting you're using the paid or licensed version, you might see your information somewhere. Somebody else is using it. So it's something that you also have to be careful about. The practitioners, operational efficiency in admissions for higher education and predictive analytics. These are things that could impact positively. But there's that black box algorithm, which is also hard to explain, that it will now marginalize some people the more. Policymakers, curriculum planners, they all have some roles to play in integrating AI. Now, we should have an institutional plan, whatever institution. Even at the class level, in my classes, I have AI policies. When I share my syllabus, say, look, for this assignment, don't use AI. For this other one, use AI. But if you should use AI, tell me how you use it. Tell me what input you made that really made this information yours. Now, when you do this, It's not about prohibiting AI. Say, okay, thou shall not. You will know that whenever you start with thou shall not, people are tempted to go and find out what will happen if thou shall. So you have to be mindful about that. So you can provide digital access, you can bring out ethical issues. The thing about ethical issues is still at its preliminary stages, and that's why everybody needs to get involved. Like the last presenter said, it's difficult to really, get to catch students using AI. Some of them are so good, and some platforms have also come up with what they call humanizers. When you finish using your AI, you take it to a humanizer, and the humanizer humanize your output. So it's a challenge, but still, we have to come up with some ethical policies and ethical committees where students will be involved, all stakeholders will be involved. We as humans will create the value we want to use of AI. Then curriculum planners should incorporate AI literacy in core courses. Then inclusivity, we can always subsidize these tools so that people will not be excluded materially because they are lacking. As the last slide, recommendations for policy makers mandate accessibility standards. It's not just enough to a lot of materials required to be accessible. In terms of color, some people are color blind. Be sure that when you make your AI output is visible to everybody. If people have some other challenges, make sure that there is some funding to develop the infrastructure and incentivize, especially multilingual contents. Institutional leaders in higher education should allocate more resources, establish inclusive design task force, integrate strategic planning. Then for us faculty and students, we should design using the UDL, Universal Design Learning Principles, where we proactively imagine the kind of diversity we have in our class and provide the resources without having to single out a group of people and say you're handicapped or you're challenged, because with that kind of profiling, it affects self-esteem. Then participation in professional development. What AI is doing is that to whom who has more will more be given. And for those who don't have, even the little they have will be taken away and given to those who have. That's what is happening. The gap will still be widening if you don't make personal effort to improve yourself. Then, wherever we can, we should advocate for accessibility of materials and also advocate for AI literacy on ethical use of them. Encourage the companies, the technology providers to provide access in design, offer affordable pricing, provide training and support, and ethical governance. So that way, we'll be sure that everybody is playing their roles in this ever-evolving landscape of the AI use. I found this material, which is on the slide, by UNESCO, Building Adaptive Capacity, and I said I should share with this conference. It came up with something that capacity, knowledge sharing, innovation, contextualization, and co-construction in the course of the use of AI, where it's bringing every stakeholder into focus so that everybody will know that it's collective responsibility. If we allow the technology people, they'll just be talking profit. If we allow the institutional leaders, they'll just be talking about what will make the institution work. If we allow policymakers, especially their politicians, they will just be talking about what vote it will bring them. So it is something we have to do collectively to be sure that we're all part of making an AI that will work for humans. So that even when you are asked, are you human? You will say, yes, I am human. And you will indeed be a human being. Thank you.
Thank you, my prof. Thank you, Professor Gu, for that comprehensive presentation on inclusivity, trying to make us understand that all aspects of inclusivity should be noted and taken cognizance of: digital inclusivity, social and cultural inclusivity, and even cognitive and physical inclusivity. And the use of AI and digitalization has its potentials and risks. And so all stakeholders should collectively ensure that inclusivity is maintained in the use of AI and digitalization. Thank you, Prof, for that presentation. We will now take the third presentation from Professor Collins Udano. Professor Collins Udano is of the computer science and currently is the head Department of Computer Science, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He's equally the director of the High Performance and Intelligent Computing Lab with activities in applied AI and NLP, natural language processing, social media, opinion mining, and sentiment analysis. He has won several international grants and successfully managed many projects. And also, he has also led a sector of the team that developed Nigeria's AI policy and has trainings in AI readiness, AI governance, among others. I welcome Professor Dano to make his presentation. Prof.
Thank you very much, Professor Ibezim and the organizers. Thank you, my audience. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, I think I have 20 minutes or so. My slides are few, so I think I will finish within the time. All right, so we'll be talking about AI in higher education and research, ethical considerations. I want to thank the previous speakers for laying the foundation to this, what we'll be talking about. So that way I will be focusing more on the subject matter, which is the ethics of artificial intelligence. As you can see today, that AI affects every area of our daily lives, from healthcare to automation, manufacturing, energy, hospitality, education. So today we'll be focusing on how AI affects education. And in recent past, there has been this argument of should we allow the use of AI? Should we allow students to use AI? That AI is going to make them to be dull. AI is going to make them to be this. And there was a protest some time ago, I think it was in the UK, if you remember that incident, where some faculties went on strike because students were using AI. But we see that there's now a shift recently, moving from outright ban to regulation. And then if we're talking about regulation, then ethics must be at the center of it. First of all, I want to show us a few things a few recommendations on AI by the UNESCO. And that will form the basis of our discussion this evening. There's this document which you see on my slide, the link is here, that encourages member nations, member states to use AI in education, especially in higher education. One of the things they said is to encourage the use of AI in education. But the emphasis is on responsible and ethical use of AI technologies in teaching, in learning, and research. So there is hardly any aspect or any topic, any subject today that you cannot teach with AI. There are technologies that are available, or there are tools that are available, because today AI is not just technology. AI is a tool that every one of us, irrespective of our background, irrespective of our discipline, will find a place to use AI in. So there is a need to encourage the use of AI in education. Some of my previous speakers have talked about the importance, like the first speaker talked about the use of deepfake, the advantage and disadvantage of it and all that. So another thing they talked about is assessment. How do you assess the quality of education that is offered through AI? Because this is where there's a lot of debate. How do you ensure that people are learning with AI tools rather than the traditional method of learning that we are used to, where the chalk and the talk uh, 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 method we've been used to all along? How do you ensure that when somebody learns with AI, the quality of education is going to be the same thing? So there must be assessment methods, there must be instruments to enable us to assess the quality of content being given to the students, the quality of content generated by the teachers using AI technology. So there must be tools for assessment. We were in a meeting last week in Lagos where this was at the center stage, especially when you have a large class of students numbering above 300, 500. How do you assess them with AI? But we find that there are tools that enable us to assess them even more effectively than in the traditional method, and to also assess them much quicker. Another area is that AI is recommended for both teachers and for students. So UNESCO also recommends that AI technologies should empower students and teachers to enhance their relational and social aspect of learning. We know that learning is not just about the content that you put on the board or in the paper or in the book, but the interaction, the social aspect is also important. I remember during the the COVID period, during I think 2020, when we had the lockdown. And then educators, institutions began to find new ways of reaching students because of the lockdown. And there was this debate on the issue of this social aspect. If we are going to teach them using e-learning and the rest of it, how do you ensure this social aspect, this relational and social aspect, because they are integral parts of learning. So, so the recommendation is that AI should also ensure that both teachers and students have ways to express their relational and social aspects of learning using AI. Sorry. Another point there is that AI meets assessment requirements. All right. So there are. Sorry, let me drag this away. Okay, just a minute. Okay. So there are assessment requirements that must be met when using AI. As you go across different disciplines, you know that, especially, for instance, if somebody is in the STEM area, or let's take physics, chemistry, where you need to assess the students on their practical experience, the practical knowledge of the course. How can we ensure that AI is able to assess these students effectively? Of course, yes, there are ways now with virtual and augmented realities. We will be able to simulate the lab environment. We can see how AI can predict the reactions that will take place when certain compounds or chemicals are put in certain environment. Another thing they recommended is that AI should not reduce cognition. should not reduce the cognitive ability. The last speaker did say something in this line. A lot of people believe that AI will reduce the cognitive ability, that it makes students to be lazy, that even not just students, even faculties like us, many times it is much easier to ask AI to generate a content for you, and you may not have the time, or you have found it to be much easier, and then you do that. So the question is, if a student goes through this process, uh, how will it affect his cognitive ability? And then another important area is AI extracting sensitive personal information that belongs to the person, that shouldn't be made public. How do we handle this? That's another area that that calls for concern. Another thing they said is to ensure user data protection. Just like what I said now, when a individual's data is collected by the AI, where does it go to? And just like Professor Ogo said a few minutes ago, especially when you use the free version of some of these generative AI, you are not so much in control of what happens with your data, even though to some extent we may not be so much in control even with the paid version, but it has some advantage over the unpaid version. So the um, Data Protection Act must be adhered to, especially when we are handling issues like healthcare data sets and other uh, sensitive data sets. Again, is on the issue of research ethics training. It is recommended that researchers in AI, or people who will be using AI, go through periodic training in AI ethics. During the time we were trying to formulate the AI policy for the country, the issue of ethics was at the core of everything we did, because somebody has to be accountable, somebody has to take responsibility, somebody has to use a system in such a way that it does not become injurious to another party. And then finally, in this note, is the need to recognize AI opportunities. AI has a lot of opportunities for both the students and for the teachers. There are so many, AI is creating a lot of jobs, AI is creating a lot of skill sets, and we also see that those who are not shipping up are shipping out, because AI is also redefining job roles. You discover that with the future of work, you discover that a lot of automation is taking place. Does not even exclude the education sector. So let's recognize the opportunities that AI has, rather than looking at the weaknesses that it may present to students and teachers. Then I want to go to ethics. What is ethical AI? That's the center of what we're talking about. What is ethical AI? It means taking steps to enhance the following: that the use of AI must bring positive impact to the users and to other parties. It also means that we must prioritize fairness. It also means that we must ensure transparency around how we develop and use AI. AI should cease from being a black box. And for that reason, a lot of models, responsible AI models, explainability models are being developed to ensure that there's transparency in what we do. Personally, during the time we were developing the AI policy, one of the recommendations that I personally made is that there is a need to benchmark AI products, AI software, AI tools. There's a need to have a gold standard on which they are checked, going through the process of the development, starting from the data, because the goodness of the AI model is determined to a large extent by the quality of data set in it. So there should be, so AI, ethical AI should also ensure transparency. So in overall, ethical AI ensures that AI innovators and data-driven decisions avoid infringing civil liberties. They, uh, they avoid infringing on people's rights, that you using AI should not infringe on people's rights. Like the first speaker talked about deepfake, where uh, deepfake is used to generate contents, even videos of somebody saying something that he or she never said. That is very unethical. Now let's look at ethical AI principles and see how they apply. I'll just bring out 5 principles out of them. Number 1 is beneficence. Ethical AI principle emphasizes that AI must be beneficial, must have beneficial outcomes for the individuals, for the society, for the environment. One aspect that many of us, maybe in this part of the world, are not talking about, maybe because we have not started, we don't have servers here that generate the content, is the area of environment. The carbon the, the carbon that is being generated, the CO2 that is being generated that affect our environment when these servers run, and the amount of cooling that is needed to keep these machines running is another area that affects our environment, so that it competes with the resources that individuals should be using. Another area on ethical AI principle is accountability. Accountability. Somebody must be held accountable for what the AI system does. And that is why it's important that creators and owners of AI systems must be made to know that whatever happens uh, with the AI system, they have to be held responsible. There has been this question: if a self-driven car hits somebody crossing the road, who is to be held responsible? The car, the manufacturer, or the person who developed the AI that enables it to self-drive itself? So, accountability is very important in ethical AI. Somebody must be held responsible uh, for the use of AI, whether it has to do with unlawful exposure of individuals' information and the rest of it. Somebody has to be accountable for that. And that takes us back to the issue I mentioned before, talking about benchmarking, having a gold standard for AI tools. Today we see there's a lot of competition in the market. Different companies want to outdo one another, bringing out different generative AI tools, and most of these things are not benchmarked, so to say. So I know the time will come that there will have to be serious regulations on some of this. Transparency is another very important area of ethical AI principle. I mentioned the issue of black box. It's important to let people know how the AI arrived at its decision, the decision that it made. How did it arrive at that conclusion? It's important to show the processes, because the process determines the quality of the product. So responsible AI must disclose the use and the impact of AI. Many a times we're only told the good part of AI. AI is going to do this, going to help you do this, but nobody talks about the adversity of the use of AI. So it is required in transparency that developers of AI tools should be able to tell us, just like when you buy a medication, you will see the side effects. So we expect to see the side effects of every tool that is out there as part of, aligning to the ethical AI principles. The last one I talk about is fairness. Fairness. AI systems should provide fair and unbiased responses to everyone. Bias is one of the serious problems that we have in AI systems. Bias could come from the area, it could start from the data set you gather. We've seen AI systems that deny certain people from a certain demography, access to loan, access to housing, access to healthcare, because the AI data set was already biased. So the bias in the data set can lead to unfairness to the users of the AI system. Bias in algorithm, what we call algorithmic bias, can also, because somebody may get a good data, an unbiased data, and then within the algorithm that run the AI, you introduce some level of bias into it, such that it discriminates a certain set of people, or race, or gender, as the case may have it. So we cannot overemphasize the need for fairness in ethical AI principles. As I conclude, when we use AI in research, especially in the higher education institutions, there are some things we also need to have at the back of our mind, or we need to know. One of them is the issue of the use of synthetic data. Synthetic data. The question is, when is it ethical to use AI-generated data sets? Especially in cases of, a lot of us justify, yes, in healthcare, because of the privacy concerns, because of the sensitive nature, we go for synthetic data. And then you also see that there's issue of people generating synthetic images to use as data for research, which are actually unethical. All right. So this is one of the things we should have at the back of our mind. When is it right for us to use synthetic data in our higher institution research? Another thing we talk about is data privacy and intellectual property. AI has a lot of risk, and one of them is the risk of leaking information. If somebody is doing a work and the work is not yet published, the work is not yet patented, and if the work is exposed to AI, what is the guarantee that we will not find that work in the public domain? Another issue is the issue of hallucination, the hallucination crisis. When AI models begin to generate data that are false, data that have distorted patterns, data that have nonsensical outputs, we say that the AI has begun to hallucinate. At that point, it's behaving like a drunkard who will take one step forward and two steps backward. So at such point, it's important that we ensure that the first thing we should do before adopting or before taking the data that AI gives to us is to do a verification first. We must verify the data that, the result that AI gives to us. We mustn't take for granted that AI is correct in everything. There must be need to verify that data, the result, because otherwise we may take hallucinated data, which can lead to false claims or false results. And then finally, on that note, peer review scrutiny. Is it right, is it ethical to allow AI to review people's paper? Is it right for AI to perform the review, go through the process of confidentiality and all that? Yeah, of course, you see that there are some big journals that employ the use of AI to screen out papers that do not meet certain criteria. Yes, that's okay if, for instance, they are looking at margin of similarities, they are looking at like amount of AI use, they are looking at some other things like self-citation and all that. It's okay at that level, but how far can we go using AI in the area of peer review? This and many others are the likely issues that are on the front burner as we discuss AI ethics in higher institutions. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to me. Hand over. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dano. Thank you for that wonderful presentation on ethical AI that ensures that users of AI do not infringe on civil rights, and that ethical AI principles should be considered when using AI, when we talk about accountability, transparency, and fairness. And in the use of AI in higher education, we should look out for the use of synthetic data in higher education research. We should also consider data privacy and also handle hallucination crisis of AI. Verify the data before you use. Thank you for that presentation. We will now take the next presentation that will be delivered by Dr. Ada Obai. Dr. Ada Obai is a lecturer and researcher in the Department of Computer Science, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She has a PhD in computer science also and has published numerous conference and journal papers in diverse areas of computer science, especially in information technology, health informatics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, Internet of Things, and precision agriculture. She is an active member of different professional bodies, including Nigerian Computer Society, African Digital Health Research Institute, Healthcare Informatics Society of Nigeria, Nigerian Women in Information Technology, and Computer Professionals Registration Council of Nigeria. We welcome Dr. Vai to make her presentation. Dr. Vai.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Prof. Nena. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this title. I also want to welcome everyone that is listening to this roundtable discussion. Okay, I've been asked to speak on the topic machine learning and data management in higher education research. Next slide, please. Okay, before I start with the topic, I've been giving two topics in one. So I want to just give a brief description or the definition of what each of them is before I delve deep into the topic. So what is machine learning? So I made it as simple as it is because I know I have a diverse audience. So I didn't want to go into deep explanation. So just as simple as it can, I just made that explanation. So machine learning is a branch of AI that helps computers learn from data to make predictions or find patterns. So just think of it as teaching a system using examples instead of explicit instructions. So the common uses include forecasting outcomes and recognizing patterns in data science. So machine learning is a branch of AI. So next slide, please. Okay, so I want to talk about the types of machine learning. So just briefly, we have the supervised learning, we have the unsupervised learning, and the reinforcement learning. Okay, so for the supervised learning, these are labeled data that have structure, of course, for use, and it can be used for predicting student success or the test scores. Then for unsupervised, it tries to find a pattern, understand, because it doesn't have labels, it's unsupervised. So it tries to find a pattern, and of course, it can be useful for clustering students' behavior or for research topics. Then for reinforcement learning, this learns through try and error, and it always comes back with feedback. So it always has a reward mechanism. So if you do well, it rewards you. If you don't do well, there's a punishment. So this is just a broad type of machine learning. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is data management? I've talked about machine learning, which is in the topic. So I now want to talk about data management. What is data management? It's the process of organizing, storing, and protecting research data so that it's accurate, reusable, trustworthy. It also includes the metadata, backups, and access control. So why does this matter? Because even the best models would fail if you have poor data. So data management is very important. Next slide, please. Okay, so why artificial intelligence? Of course, as I said, machine learning is a branch of AI. So why in our higher education? Why is this coming up now? Remember that our higher institutions are drivers of AI adoption. We are the ones to drive this AI adoption because we are training the future generation. So we are supposed to be at the forefront driving the AI adoption. So what is the issue? We have mounting pressure. Of course, we have surging enrollment and we have limited infrastructure. Our universities, people want to do the university education, but we have limited infrastructure. And of course, brain drain and faculty shortages. Most of our lecturers are jappering, they are moving to get greener pastures. So there's brain drain happening in the institution. Yes, and there's also demand for improved graduation rates and institutional accountability. Thousands and thousands graduate every year, and there's this demand to have this improved graduation rates and institutional accountability. Then what else? Why higher education? We're talking about the technological push. We have this growing digitization of institutional data. We want to digitize institutional data. So it's growing every day. There's this need to grow it. Also, mobile penetration enabling new data sources. So we have new data sources. So we have to have this mobile penetration that will enable these new data sources. Also, global AI momentum reaching Nigerian institutions. Of course, you know this AI now is global, so it's reaching Nigerian institutions. So there's this need to drive AI adoption. So what are the opportunities? The opportunities are found. We have the evidence-based policy for educational governance, especially in Nigeria. So we have this personalized learning for diverse student population. Of course, we know we have diverse student population in our universities. So we have this personalized learning, and AI and ML will help us to achieve this diverse students population, the diverse students to achieve this personalized learning for them. Then it's also this data-driven solution for local challenges. We're encouraged now, AI is global, but we have to localize it. So I want to bring it down to Nigerian institutions. How do we localize these data-driven solutions? How do we localize it to make it our own local challenges and solve them using AI and ML? Next slide, please. Okay, the foundation. We should remember that data is the foundation of AI and ML. If we don't have data, we can't have artificial intelligence. We can't have data to train using machine learning. So the foundation is data. And so we have to have good data management. If we don't have good data management, how can we have a good foundation for AI and ML, especially down here? Because other countries, developed countries, have gotten good data foundation. But what of us here in Nigeria? Do we have it? What are our challenges? So of course, you know the key Nigerian data challenge. What are these key data challenges? We don't have any unified data. Most of our institutions have diverse data, that data scattered here and there. Because you know, as an institution, we have a lot of data. We are data rich. But what is our problem? This unified data. It's a big problem for us. Also, data integration. If we unify this data, how do we integrate this data that we have? Also, data governance is also a problem. The quality of the data we have, the infrastructure. Do we have the correct infrastructure? Do we have adequate infrastructure to carry this data, to manage data effectively, efficiently? From data I got, it's only 23 institutions have repositories nationwide in Nigeria, which is very poor compared to high number of high institutions we have in Nigeria. Only 23 have repositories, which is very poor. Next slide, please. Okay, so why do they matter together? So I'm not talking about a synergy. Why do they now matter together? The machine learning in the higher institution, machine learning and data management in the higher institution. So why do they matter together? Machine learning depends on high quality data. As I said earlier, the data has to be of high quality for us to train it well, because if we train high quality data, then of course we would have AI, machine learning models that give accurate information, that produce reliable information, information that we can use, that have good data. Because remember that good data give reliable insights. We want to train thinkers, students that can produce local solutions. And if we do that without data that is of high quality, then of course we'll have biases, we'll have missing values, inconsistencies. Of course, we'll have unreliable models. Okay, because as I said, bad data has misleading results. So data management is the foundation of trustworthy machine learning. So if you don't have good data management, if you don't have good data that we can manage well, then we don't have a trustworthy machine learning algorithms or models. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the typical data we can have in higher education research? Of course, we can have student records. So of course, we have high data in student records in the higher institution. We also have learning systems, also have high in the university system. We also have surveys and experiments. A lot of surveys are going on in the universities. A lot of experiments are going on, and also we generate millions and millions of data from these surveys and experiments. Also, publications, and our publications, of course, and our research is in the university. We also generate high data because we have our articles, we have the reports that we make that require natural language processing. So we have a lot of data floating in our institutions. So these are the kind of some examples of data that we have domiciled in our higher education. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is machine learning uses in educational research? Uses in education, it can be used to predict student successes and identify students needing support. Of course, since we handle students, we need to predict their successes, identify the problems they have, and it's with data that we can do that, and now know how to give those students that need help, how to give them the support that they need. We could also analyze large collection of publications to find emerging topics. The large quantity of topics that we churn out from the university. Each session is amazing. So we can use machine learning to analyze this large collection of publications and find emerging topics from them. All these topics, we can really find also how we can also use machine learning algorithms to cluster similar courses or learning behaviors for targeted intervention. Remember I said that our students have diverse ways that they can learn. So we can harness these clusters of similar courses or learning behaviors to adapt the personalized learning so that each student will know how to direct each student to learn well. So also to detect patterns and trends and inform policy and pedagogy. Remember that we are the ones that will inform our policymakers on how to move the educational system forward. So when we have these data patterns and we're using machine learning to get the best way to have these policies and pedigree, will now interact with our policymakers and advise them on important policies that would help drive this AI and ML adoption in our higher institutions. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the tools we need? I just want to go through this. This is core computing, but at least it's also to educate everyone around. So there's some tools that we need to drive machine learning, tools that we need to drive machine learning. So one is Python or R, is a programming language. So this is for data cleaning, analysis, and modeling. So we need Python or R to do that. We also need our SQL databases. Of course, once you have data, you have to store your data well. It's part of it. So storing the data well is important. So you need some SQL databases to store your data well, to have a structured storage, and also to enable you to query the databases. Because if you don't store them well, it will be difficult for you to query those databases. Okay, then you also have your GitHubs. You have your Gits, that's the GitHubs, where you have the version control for coding and documentation. So this is where you document your coding and also your version control. Then also you have your basic familiarity with, of course, you have to familiarize yourself with some other little tools that would help you. So this is also very important, to familiarize yourself with little tools aside from, I just want to make it a general thing. Just little tools, your spreadsheets. You need to know how to use your spreadsheets. You need to use your command line tools. These are just few things you also need to have at the back of your mind before you can use machine learning. Next slide, please. Okay, data quality is critical. My senior colleagues have mentioned data quality. Of course, it's very critical. And I also mentioned at the beginning of my talk, that if you don't have high quality data, the ML cannot make high quality decisions. Your models will not make high quality decisions because your data is of low quality. So data quality is very critical. I'll not talk more on this because I think it's been talked more on by my senior colleagues. So I'll pass this, but it is very important that your data is of very high quality. Next slide, please. Okay, ethics, biases, and privacy is another thing that my HOD talks on. That was his topic, really. Of course, the ethics of using machine learning, AI. Of course, he talked about the biases that are involved. Of course, the privacy issues, he talked about this at length too. So it's very important that you have to talk about the ethics. Of course, you mentioned the biases that the AI models have. And these biases, I must tell you, also results from not using high quality data. So we can't overemphasize high quality data because it helps us to reduce the biases. And also the privacy issues of also a very important part. How do we protect the data? Because a lot of personal data is in the space, is in the open space. So how do we protect it? How do we protect people's personal information? Because they mean a lot to them. So ethics, biases, and privacy, we can't emphasize them, especially in this era of AI and machine learning. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the next step for research? Because remember, we're researchers in higher institution. So what is the next step for us? How do we use this machine learning and AI? So for me, the first thing is to start with little steps, start with little pilots, one step at a time. So we pick up a data set, okay, and one question. We clean the data, try a sample model, and interpret the result. AI is there to help us. We are to lead it. You understand? We are the ones to tell the AI what to do. We have to learn prompt engineering so that we can prompt the AI on how best to help us, tell it what we have in mind. So we start small. That is the step for it. Start small. Then we document thoroughly. Remember that if we do all this and we don't document well, it's a big problem. Document our data. Remember that we're sourcing for locally produced data. That is our aim now. We want to search for data locally. We don't want to rely on the data we get from cargo and so on. We don't want to do that. We want to generate our own local data. And the only way we can do that and do that effectively is to document whatever data we get. Document and document well so that we can build our own database of local data and that will solve local problems. Because remember that data, foreign data will not solve our local problems. They can never do that. It is our local data that can solve our local problems. So the next one is to protect and share responsibly. That is falling back on ethics. We have to be responsible people as researchers. We have to be sure that we don't manufacture data. My HOD talked on that too. We don't manufacture data. We have to be careful about hallucinations. So we protect and share data responsibly. So as researchers in the higher institution, we need to protect the data that we have. Because as I told you, we are data rich. Our institutions are data rich. So we have to learn how to protect them. And when we want to share, we share responsibly. Next slide, please. Okay, so beyond our individual institutions, beyond them, what next? Let's move outside our institutions a bit. So our Gen AI, of course, generative AI and ML, of course, in the higher education, we have to start our dialogue in our institutions. So we have to have inter-institution and intra-institution dialogue. How do we adopt this AI and the machine learning? So we need to interact among ourselves, have committees that speak about it. How do we adopt it? How do we use it responsibly? And not only that, as we speak, we also educate others on how to use it, how the responsible use of AI. Because if you don't educate people on how to use them responsibly, they will use it irresponsibly. So we have to have this dialogue, continuous dialogue within ourselves on how to, and bring out policies from this dialogue on how to use AI and machine learning responsibly. Then we have the national dialogue. Remember, I said earlier that we are the ones to profess solution because we are those that are using it in institutions. So we know its pros and cons. And it is left for us to now give advice to the policymakers and tell them how do we use, and tell them you people should make policies that will help us to use AI and ML very well. So there has to be this national dialogue. Then there also has to be this policy development. So once we're through with this dialogue, it now results to policy. Policies are made, policies that will help us move this AI policy forward. Then not only having policies, what of implementation? What is a policy without its implementation? We can say a whole lot, and if we don't implement them, it means little or nothing. So we have to move from making policies to implementing those policies. There has to be a movement from making the policies and implementing them effectively. And remember that in implementation, a lot of things are involved. Of course, there has to be the cost, there has to be a lot of things put in place, the infrastructure, the cost, then the training, because you have to train those that we implement. So there are a lot of things involved. So we have to be people that do what the policies are saying, not only making a lot of policies that little or nothing is done about those policies. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm concluding. So in conclusion, machine learning helps researchers uncover patterns and insights from complex data sets. So I've said that. So, and it's very important to have good data management because this makes our data findable and well documented and reusable. Okay, and so together, machine learning and strong data practices support reliable, reproducible research and drive academic success. So what drives academic success? If we have good data and we now have machine learning models learning on this good data. So it really helps us to improve our research in higher education. Next slide, please. So I think this should be my last slide. Okay, thank you all for listening, and I'm open to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ada. Thank you for that wonderful presentation on machine learning. You highlighted that data management is the foundation of machine learning algorithms. So when the data is bad, then the algorithm is also going to be affected. You also mentioned that data quality is critical, and when the data is of good quality, then we can be sure to get good patterns. Then data sharing should also be done responsibly. And doing this, we should look beyond individual institutions. There should be policies that support, good data generation and good machine learning algorithm generation. And then not just having the policies, but also implementing them properly. Thank you, Dr. Ada. And thank you, everyone. We're supposed to have a third, no, rather a fifth presentation by Professor Usman, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of University of Nigeria, Nsukka, but he is unavoidably absent now. But he sent his slides early enough, so we're going to share to everyone at the end of the um, conference. I have also looked at the charts. We have only been receiving commendations in the chat. I've not seen any question. But let me ask our prof that talked on inclusivity. The last part of your presentation, you mentioned stakeholders, that it should be a joint effort to ensure that inclusivity is maintained in the use of AI and digitalization as a whole. So, Prof, I don't know how in this time where maybe because of the limited resources, every department or every sector or every stakeholder is just looking out to get the resources that will just be enough for them to carry out the activities. How can we, jointly do this thing, ensure that inclusivity is maintained amidst limited resources?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. You see, when we are looking at inclusivity, it simply means having everybody around the table while we're discussing AI. If doctors are trained using AI, they will meet patients who should be AI compliant if they are going to interact effectively. If students are being trained in a world where AI will be involved in the workforce, where AI will be a co-worker, Cloud they just launched a platform they called co-worker, where the AI is part of the workforce. So it means that everybody has to be interested in what the ethical use of it, the unethical use of it, the inclusive use of it. You see, if communication is something that goes both ways, the person who is sending the information and the person who is receiving it. So if AI is just restricted to higher education, where you think it's at the average tower, whatever happens in the higher educational setting affects every other person. So it becomes something that we all stakeholders in this business. So evidently, this is a moving target. Nobody is sure where AI is going to. Even the definition of the ethical use of AI is still a work in progress. Such that the companies who are spearheading this, AI is not interested in inclusivity by itself. They're interested in profit. The institutions that are using it, they're interested in, high enrollment and having the institutions work. So who is in charge of AI? Everybody. So, and if everybody is in charge of AI, we need to sit down and discuss it as a people. I started the presentation by just telling you that I'm human. AI is now asking us to identify ourselves. So it now means that we don't have to leave it to AI to decide whether we're humans or not. So we all have to work together, make sure that we provide that ecosystem where everybody who will ever be affected by AI, even if you're not going to use it, you are still being affected by use of AI. It means that we will all have to come together and make our input proactively, not retroactively. Because if we wait until the technology people will conclude what they're doing, they may not have our interest completely. If we now wait for students, to adapt to the use of AI, we might now have a system where, the technology will decide what will be in your content and what will not be in your content. So it is, for the interest of everybody to include everybody who will ever be affected by the use of AI in discussing both the ethics, the regulations, the laws, and the use of it generally. That's my view.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. Then to Dr. Ada and Professor Udano, both of you talked about quality of data. Quality of data. The data should be good. In fact, Dr. Ada, you emphasized that. So how do we ensure that the quality of data produced or we use for creating, developing algorithms are of good quality? How can we do that?
Okay. I mentioned that the quality of data should be good. And I also remember saying that we should have our localized data because you cannot trust what someone else gives you. You can only trust what you produce yourself to a great extent. So I encourage localized data, sourcing our own data, and having a good repository to properly store the data we get. Because the data we get, we cannot, no matter how much we try, we cannot say, yes, this data is correct, that the data is good, because we do not know the sources of this data. But if we harness our own data locally, to some extent, we can say, yes, we know the quality of this data because we got this data ourselves. So for me, I prefer and I say that we have our own local data. We source for our own local data. That is the only way we can say, yes, this is a good quality data. That is my own view about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Then we now have like two questions from the comments we have from Raji Kayode. It says, Sir, as managers or management of institutions, how can we set up good implementers committee? Good implementers committee. Then another one is from Amadi Anthony. Says, in academic research, are there some recommended AI tools for literature review? Then the next one, please, speakers, be taking notes. You can answer any of them. How can this be achieved? I mean, making our data to be indigenous in order to address our local challenges in Africa, since the database is not available at our end, but with the developers. Said, how can this be achieved? I mean, making our data to be indigenous in order to address our local challenges in Africa, since the database is not available at our end, but with the developers. Then lastly, we have what can be done about the implications for critical thinking. How can concerns about job loss due to AI be addressed? Are there strategies for educating students on the responsible use of AI? So, speakers, please.
Okay, may I speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay, maybe I start with the person who asked about tools for literature review. There are many of them, depending on the aspect of literature review or what you are doing. There is the tool called Elicit, which helps for systematic discovery. There's Perplexity AI, which helps to for citations. There's Consensus. There are many of them. There are quite a number of them. And Research Rabbit, Site.ai. So I think the quickest way is to go to maybe ChatGPT or any of this Gen AI and ask it to give you the tools for literature review, and it's going to list a good number of them for you. And then you see at what stage of your literature review you should use each one. There are those you use at the beginning, there are those you use to help you determine if a paper is worth reviewing. You can do a text summarization and of that paper to determine if you should investigate it further. There are those you use for concluding the work, for the final editing, like Grammarly and the rest of them. So these things are out there. Today, information is at your fingertips. They are no longer hidden. And then to address the issue of local data sets, it is said recently in present times that data is the new gold, and which is the truth. AI is driven by data. And if we want to solve our local problems, we need local data that is domesticated, that represents what we want to solve. But I want to say that curating data is very expensive. Many a times you need funders. You need a lot of funds to generate data, depending on the kind of data. Sometimes it may involve you creating or building Internet of Things devices to enable you to capture data from your environment, such as maybe atmospheric particles, temperature, pressure, humidity, and all that. So yes, so that you need funding to do that, as if you want to get good data. And one of the things that makes a data good, data set good, is that it must be representative enough. All right, you should be able to capture different aspects of the demography you are looking at, and then it also has to be large. When we talk about big data, it has to be large such that it will be able to, so that when you are training the model, it does not quickly go into what we call overfitting, whereby it learns so fast, and what it learns is just a little representation of the picture, and that for you to train AI to recognize a person, you have to take several shots, several photographs of that person from different angles for AI to be able to recognize that person. Because you may take the picture from the left side, and he has not seen the right side, and you will not be able, so you can quickly overfit, and will not give you the best kind of result. So for me, I think there's a move, there's a need for us to generate our own data set, but can we fund it? And this is where we now need government, funding agencies, our educational funding bodies like the TED Fund and the rest of them to come in to fund data collection. I'm saying this from experience because I had over 100,000 grant, $1,000 grant just to generate data set. That's all, just to generate data set, funded from outside Nigeria, of course. So I think if we want to solve our problems, we have to be intentional about it. We have to bring out money, because without data, you can't have any system, you can't have any solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last comment we have now is just supporting what Professor Dano said from Dr. Emmanuel Wangu. He says AI detectors are not 100% accurate and that students should not be punished without manual critical judgment. So we need to get it right, and it's from the data that we have or generate. We need to get it right from there. Okay, then there's a last one that dropped now. How will these ethical issues be implemented and checkmated, especially in deepfake? And then, what of situations where the sources of information or data is wrong? I think these were handled, but let's just give it just a final touch before we end the session because our time is almost up. We have less than 3 minutes to go. Speakers?
Okay. If I should take the floor, it still goes back to issue of policy, AI policy. Every country must have AI policy. That's the starting point. And these policies must be approved or gazetted by the National Assembly into law. So AI, the offenses in AI, through using AI, should be treated as any other offense in the civil society. So that's the only way it can be enforced. It must be backed by law. So if there are policy, those policies should be made to be laws and enforceable. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Can,
Ada,
can I
okay,
add
go
to
ahead.
it? Yes, I want
Yes,
to add
do.
to it.
Do.
I also want us to, as an individual, act responsibly because we all know what is right and what is wrong. If you're getting data the wrong way, you know. You don't even need to be told. If you're sourcing for it the right way, you know. So I want us also, without the rules, the laws, to take responsibility ourselves and make sure we get data from the right sources. So once we do that, it's a personal thing. Just call it a personal thing for you to do that I must do the right thing, whether I'm being policed around, whether I'm going to be punished or not. We just make it a personal thing and make sure that we get data from the right sources. We don't fabricate data. We don't forge data. Even if we use synthesized data or synthetic data, we mention it, say it out, that this data was synthesized. We are truthful about it. So once
Mhm.
we do that on a personal capacity, we can get good data. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. And on this note, I want to thank all our presenters for making out this time, to be with us and give us this spark of knowledge. Thank you to all participants, especially those that raised the questions that we are discussing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Veronica, our technical person that made it possible that we are having a seamless, presentation. Thank you so much. And I want to thank the chair, Professor Rosabel, for also giving us this opportunity. Thank you, everyone. May God continue to bless us all. Veronica, I hand over to you.
Thank you all of you for participate and also for collaborating with us. And briefly to conclude, we would like to congratulate and also to thank you all the guests for the participation. We believe that they all have addressed topics that are of great interest for all of us and for everyone who is present. And we hope that you will be available to participate on new roundtable with us to share more knowledge. So congrats one more time and thank you for your time and participation.
Mm. Thank
Thank
you.
you all of you.
Yeah.
Bye. Have a good
Bye.
afternoon.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Ada. Thank you, Professor Dano. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.